Wake up! We're doing a film. Ah!
That definitely peaked the microphone.
I saw that bar go all the way to the top.
Welcome back, everyone.
What's up?
We are back. We are talking about a movie this week, as we do every week until we die.
Well,
Do you want to guess what movie we're covering this week?
would it happen to be the one that we watched?
No, wait, what movie was that?
A Nightmare on Elm Street?
What?
The original?
What?
I know.
Not the 2010 child molester one?
No.
What?
Not the Quentin one.
Not the Quentin one. Anyways. So we're back. We're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street this week. This week is my pick. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't think about that.
Certainly wasn't mine.
Oh, what? You don't like this movie?
I'm not saying
You
that.
don't
I'm
like
saying
this
this
movie?
is a very characteristic pick for you. Is it not?
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, exactly. Shut up.
Anyways, let's get into it. So let's talk about some fun facts, and then we'll talk about
trauma, which
we
is
could,
even funner facts.
we could talk about trauma. We could talk about the movie, and then we can talk about trauma, and then how the movie applies to trauma.
All right.
Anyways.
I'm getting ahead of myself here.
You are getting ahead. So you just want to talk about psychology.
I'm so excited
blah,
to talk
blah,
about
blah.
trauma.
Psychology,
Hey.
blah, blah, but that's not half our show.
Hey. You would be nothing here without me.
I know, this would just be Ed Cinema.
Cinema?
Ed Cinema.
Cinema.
Oh, it's late. Anyways, the movie was directed by Wes Craven, the late Wes Craven.
Crave case.
Crave case.
I've been thinking about White Castle a lot lately. I really want White Castle. Can we fly down to Florida for some White Castle?
Why don't we just go to New York? Just one in New York.
Nah.
For context, we're in Massachusetts.
I'm not going to say it. If you're listening from New York, I love you.
If you're a New Yorker that listens to our podcast, you are the best.
We love you so much. But you know what? You New Yorkers have a certain
an eccentric personality.
You have a certain reputation attached to you guys when it comes to driving. I'm going to leave it at that.
I think they know.
Yeah. Yeah, they know. We love you anyway. We love you even if you're bad drivers.
But hey, you're listening to our show, so I mean, it makes you a good New Yorker.
Yeah.
And people do say, statistics show, if you listen to our show while you're driving, you become a good driver.
That is, evidence-based.
So I think everyone should listen to our podcast so they can stop driving bad.
Yeah. Stop hitting curbs.
This is
for every,
so that we don't get sued. This is a joke. If you listen to our show, you will not become a better driver. Do not sue us.
I mean, technically, because there's no study on it, there's no evidence to prove that that's not true.
That's true.
Just not put that out there.
We need to increase our test size.
Yes.
What the fuck are we talking about right now? We
I
need to
don't
get
know.
on topic.
I don't know.
Anyways, the movie was directed by Wes Craven. Was released in 1984. Stars Heather Langenkamp. I saw two different pronunciations of it on Google, so I'm going to cover myself and say both. And Robert Englund, who plays Fred Krueger. Now, we're going to do something really unique. No podcast has ever done this before.
Tell me.
We're going to read the synopsis.
Crazy.
We never done this before on a show. We probably should have done this from the beginning. We're talking about movies that people have never seen.
You live and you learn. Yeah, that especially came to be a problem when it came to teeth.
Yeah, with teeth especially.
She sounded fucking crazy.
I think a good amount of people know what Shutter Island's about. I think To Die For you can infer by what we're talking about. But I think I'm just going to turn this down a little bit. But I think Teeth in particular was a the cutoff where like This might be too much. Like people might not know what we're talking about.
I think we need a little bit of context on this one.
Yeah, but now let's start it with the movie that probably everyone knows what it's about.
Yeah.
Yep. So, teenager Nancy Thompson must uncover the dark truth concealed by her parents after she and her friends become targets of the spirit of the serial killer with a bladed glove in their dream, in which, if they die, it kills them for real.
Ooh, spooky.
Money Time. It was made on a budget of 1.1 million and it grossed 57 million worldwide. Mr. Worldwide.
Mr. Worldwide.
The film was critically received well upon its release and has since become known as one of the greatest horror films ever made. And I think that still holds true.
Yeah.
Still
I'd
really
say
good.
so.
When
Yeah.
we watched it, you got jumped at one of the parts.
Yeah.
You were like,
I
"Bro!"
can't even remember what part it was, but
We'll talk about it. I'll go into it. I remember what part.
oh, okay. For future episodes, I think when we talk about budget, you should insert a cha-ching noise.
Cha-ching.
Yeah. Just a money time. That's an appropriate time for a cha-ching noise.
Yeah, but some movies have like weird budgets. Like in The Mouth of Madness, it was
Yeah.
like it's either $2 or $40 million. It's like awesome.
Somewhere in that range. Somewhere between $0 and all the money in the world.
Yep.
Sounds right.
Now this week is really different because now you have a fun fact about the movie.
I do have a fun fact. While I was doing my psychology research, I found a fun fact about how the movie came to be, some inspiration behind it. So this is from history.com, so reputable source. Let me find the quote. Craven found inspiration for the landmark horror film through an article that was published in the LA Times. He recounted the story of a refugee child from the Cambodian genocide who was terrified to sleep for fear that he would be attacked in his dreams and never wake up. When he finally fell asleep, his parents thought the crisis was over. Then they heard screams in the middle of the night. By the time they got to him, he was dead. He died in the middle of a nightmare. And this was actually part of kind of like a little mini epidemic because he wasn't the only kid from this genocide that had the same experience. And there have been some theories on why that was. Some people suspected something to do with like Agent Orange and like chemical warfare doing something to their bodies. But I don't know what the truth behind it is. I'm no doctor.
Yeah. That is interesting. It's a I don't want to say cool for lack of a better word, but it is an interesting way of pulling this story out from that true story because they're kind of completely different besides like dying in the nightmare.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because you can see it in this movie, but they're nothing alike.
Yeah. I mean, before reading that article, I had no idea that that had happened to someone before.
Yeah. Interesting. Should we talk about what the topic is first and then talk about the movie? Should we talk about the movie first?
Yeah, probably talk about the movie first, and then the topic, and then how the topic relates to the movie.
How we structure every episode.
Yes, precisely.
So we're going to talk about the movie right now, right here, right now.
Let's do it.
So I got some notes here. So we can we're going to do something a little different here this time. Really spicing it up here this week.
All right, what's the
We're going to
spice?
try to talk about the film in order so we don't forget anything.
My brain doesn't work that way.
Anyways, the movie opens. No, just kidding. We're not going that deep. So, something I do like is how Freddy is set up so cleanly in the beginning. So, like, not even just the Tina dream sequence, but more so that the movie shows that all these teenagers are having the same dream without you seeing every single person's dream for the first
Yeah,
20 minutes or
That'd
something
be
like that.
really fucking boring.
Yeah.
I think I would have turned it off if they did that. If the first 20 minutes of the movie was just a bunch of people's dreams.
Yeah. But I like how we focus on Tina and they kind of do. I know this is before Scream, but they kind of do a Scream thing where you're following Tina and it kind of seems like she's the lead. and then she ends
That's
up
what
dying.
that reminds me of. I was trying to think. I was thinking like the dream sequences remind me of something, and that's exactly it. It's like Scream.
Mm. And it's also the same director, Scream.
Wow, that's
Why?
crazy.
What?
What?
So yeah, I do really like the setup. I feel like this movie is really well set up and doesn't over explain anything. And it kind of keeps you going. It has like a nice brisk pace in the beginning where it's just like these are the characters, these are the main four people you're gonna be following, soon to be three. But like these are the people you're following, and this is what the story is about. This person's in their dream, and it's very cleanly set up.
I love a good show don't tell setup.
Yeah, exactly. And even though Nancy explicitly says it, I think Rod and Glenn have like a well, I don't know. Well, it's just a dream.
Yeah.
And then this is where I believe what something you want to mention, where Glenn was just like, "Oh, if I just say it's not a dream, then
Oh, well, like if you just tell yourself it's just a dream, then then Freddy can't kill you. You
yeah,
just take his power away.
yeah." It's literally set up in like the second scene in the movie. So I think it's a nice way of like putting that in there.
Mhm.
What do you like about the movie?
To me, it feels a little different from other horror movies that I've watched because Freddy exists kind of in his own land. So it's not like they're afraid in their own homes exactly. It's only a problem when they go to sleep. I think that's really interesting because in a lot of horror movies, it's like he lurks at night, which he does, but they have to fall asleep in order for him to be there. um, which in my mind adds another level of psychological torture because sleep deprivation is very damaging on the body and can cause hallucinations, delusions, all kinds of things. So imagine their thought process being that sleep deprived and being pursued by a killer in their dreams.
Mm. Yeah, and that's something I really like for Freddy compared to other slashers. It's just like most slashers, you get put in their situation, like, for example, Chucky, like, if they didn't buy the doll, then they wouldn't have Chucky. Or like, oh, if we didn't go to this stupid camp, then we wouldn't have this Jason guy chasing us. But it's like Freddy, it's like you have to sleep. Like you can't
Yeah.
like go to sleep somewhere else and then Freddy can't get you. Like no matter where you sleep, like he is gonna come for you.
Yeah, it comes very apparent throughout the movie that there's only so much you can do to avoid facing him. It's inevitable.
Yeah. He is sort of like Michael Myers in a way where because Michael, to me at least, embodies evil, and it's like you can't escape evil. Like it's just gonna
You
keep coming.
literally can't kill him.
Yeah.
The
So
man
like
does not die.
exactly. So I feel like Freddy is like that inescapable thing, just like Myers.
Yeah.
But something you also mentioned in that is I like how Freddy's dream world allows for creativity in the way that these like murders happen and twisting around things that are just like kind of horror tropes, like being chased away from the killer. Like, oh no, the killer's following me. I mean, like, oh, he's right behind me. Like two moments I can think of is like when Freddy's chasing Tina, like behind the house, and then he just like ends up right behind her, and then there's also the other moment where Nancy's just like running up the stairs and the stairs become like goo and like
Mhm.
she gets it. It's just like a nice creative way of like changing something from the killer's chasing me to like this killer's like controlling this realm that I'm in and he could really be anywhere at any time.
Yeah, and it also adds in the element of you're in a dream world and everybody's had really bizarre dreams that some elements don't make any sense. And what? I'll share a personal story. Last night, I had a dream that my dog was laying at the end of my driveway. And I was like, oh no, don't go into the street. Don't go into the street. And he walked into the street and morphed into a car.
He literally transformed into a car.
I just like that this movie adds in some ridiculous things that reinforce the fact that they're in a dream. And also, some of that also kind of blurs the boundaries between dreams and reality because it's like, is this a sleep deprivation hallucination or am I in a dream? And I think that the scene where Tina's in the body bag and Nancy's in class, I think that's the best example of that.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that scene's probably like the second best scene in the whole movie, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I'd say so. But yeah, I think that's really the only time in this movie that it does it like super well. I'm not saying it doesn't do it well, but I think that's the time where it kind of captures that the best. Say the other time is when Nancy's sleeping and Glenn's supposed to wake her up for the
Mhm.
first time, and then he doesn't. And then this is where you got jump scared, where Freddy comes out of the bush.
Oh, yeah.
uh, but like that moment is kind of like, is she dreaming right now, or is she just going to the police station? Because like you see Glenn when she calls her name or calls his name, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm here." So it just kind of makes it seem like he's following her.
Mhm.
But I feel like the Tina scene in the body bag is much scarier and
Yeah.
creepier than the Glenn one.
And also, at first, it looks just like how things were when she was awake, but then when she goes out into the hallway to follow Tina, then you see, like, the leaves and the hallway's a
Mm.
little dark, and that's when you start to realize, "Okay, this is the dream world."
Yeah, and there's also that one moment where like the hall monitor comes by,
Oh,
and it's like
yeah.
it's like, okay, is she dreaming right now? And then she like the hall monitor's like, no running in the hallway. And then like,
And she's
that's
got
like
the
the
finger
freaking claw.
knives.
Yeah. Oh my god. So a note that I wrote is, can we talk about how cool fucking Freddy's hands are, like as a symbol? Like
Explain further.
I'm not like in terms of like it being symbolic,
Oh.
but like in terms of like if you were to silhouette this person, like like for example, because I'm
Like,
looking.
how iconic the
Yeah.
outline
Yeah.
is, like, when you see that glove, you know it's Freddy.
Yeah, like, for
Yeah.
example, just because 'cause I'm looking at it right now, like, if you saw, like, Indiana Jones silhouetted and you saw the fedora and the whip, you would know it's Indiana
Yeah.
Jones, and, like,
Yeah.
Freddy honestly, Freddy might be, even though as much as I like Michael, might be the best, like, silhouette where it's like, "That's him."
Yeah. Well, because it's such an individualized, like, distinct weapon. The only thing that's really close to it is Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah,
But a lot of other slasher movies, they just use knives
yeah,
or some variation of a blade.
yeah, and I think the only other one that could compare to, like, the silhouette, like, icon test would probably be Leatherface, like,
Yeah, I
with
was
him
gonna
holding
say
the
that.
chainsaw above him, and then maybe Chucky, but I'd say more Chucky
Just
because of
because
his
he's
height.
short.
Yeah, his height, and he has, like, the big kitchen knife compared to him, but I think
Yeah.
that's the only reason why.
Because otherwise, you have to see their mask,
Yeah,
like with Ghostface, Michael Myers,
Jason.
Jason. Yeah, so he's really the only one outside of Bubba where the weapon is the most distinct thing about them.
Yeah. I would say maybe in terms of person, maybe Pinhead too, possibly.
Mm, the box thing. Yeah.
Maybe not the box, but more so, like, the nails that come out of him, that's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
It's kinda hard to execute in a silhouette, though.
Yeah, it is. He's so cool, though.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I wanted to bring that up because, like, I mean, you can't not mention the finger knives and how cool it is.
I wanna know who thought that up and how. Did it come to them in a dream?
Ooh.
Ooh.
I hope so. That was a great idea. One of the best ideas ever. Top 10 ideas in
Also, it
history.
sells so well for merch,
Oh
too.
yeah, I have the finger
Yeah,
knives. Yeah,
exactly. Who doesn't want a set of finger knives? It's
because they're cool,
sick.
and you can like wiggle them around and stuff like that.
And prop knives are so lame. They're not original.
Yeah, but like having like finger knives and like being able to like carry stuff, and it's just cool.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
And it also just allows for such like more unique stuff to do with it than just a knife. Like
Yeah.
you can like put your hand straight forward and like jab, or you can like
And he
swing,
yeah,
or
he slashes himself
yeah,
open and he, like, does creepy movements with his fingers, and because he has knives on them, it kind of elongates them and adds to the creepy effect that I mean, he does that weird thing with his tongue too.
Oh
It
yeah.
just I don't know, the weird shit he does with his hands when there's knives attached to them really adds to the fact that he's a freak.
Yeah. And I mean, even when you're thinking about it, like it allows because like killers have their one hand occupied, but like the movie does take
Mm,
advantage of him having both hands available. And it's something I was going to mention, but I can kind of to it now. As I think this movie looks really cool, like it's shot really well,
yeah.
and I think a lot of that is because the finger knives are framed so well in shots. Like one of my favorite shots in the movie has to be like the tub one, where his
Mm,
claws are coming through the tub, like it's just so fucking cool. And it's like it's much creepier with him having the finger knives where it's like injury is like right at the tip of this rather than it just being like a hand.
yeah. Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. And if you take a clip of it, it's like, obviously, that's from Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
There's no mistake about that. When you see those finger knives, you know where that's coming from.
Yeah. But I we had to bring up the finger knives. It's a big topic of discussion.
That's valid.
What do you think about Nancy?
I like her as the final girl
Mhm.
because something that I really like about her versus other final girls that you see in other movies is the fact that she did her fucking research and she came together with this plan on how she was going to trap him. Like she was really thinking about it. And this girl was very sleep deprived and she still did all that planning. Like she was taking caffeine pills and chugging coffee, and she still was reading books about putting together booby traps.
Yeah. And I also love that she goes and seeks out Freddy like at the end of the movie because most final girl, final character situations is they're still running away from the killer and it's like a
Yeah, that's
last ditch
true.
effort. So like even for example, like just thinking about like Terminator. Like Terminator, like they blow the fucking machine up in the truck and then like its body is still running and then it's just Sarah and the Terminator and like the newspaper factory and she's still running away from it.
Mhm.
It's not like Sarah or Laurie Strode or Sydney Prescott is like, I'm gonna go. Well, Sydney does it. I know I need to mention this because all the Scream nerds would be like, actually.
That's not how that happened.
Besides one moment in Scream 1 where she becomes the killer, I put that in parentheses for like a minute and then stabs Stewie. I think that's what his name is. Besides that one moment, none of those people are like, I am going to seek out this person or this thing and kill it. The only thing I can maybe think of is aliens, but they also have Ellen has a fucking gun. There's a
Yeah.
machine gun.
I'd be more inclined to run towards a killer if I had a machine gun too.
Exactly, yeah. And like coming from the place where Nancy has been sleep deprived, she's watched her friends
Mhm.
get murdered. I think it allows for her to be a much more interesting final girl compared to others.
And I like that what she uses and relies on most to defend herself is not any kind of weapon, it's her intellect.
Yep.
And the things that she realizes along the way, like the fact she was able to grab Freddy's hat and bring that into the real world in that sleep study. She takes that and applies that knowledge and realizes that she could bring the entire guy back to the real world.
Yeah. And I also like how she like realistically gets way more tired looking as the film gets
Mhm.
going. Like,
She even gets gray hair.
yeah, she does get gray hair from a dream. Like when it's from that doctor's office thing, she just wakes up with.
Yeah.
So it's not a thing of like whether or not she got burnt or something like that. But even then, like the stress level's got to be crazy for the
'Cause
return of
I
that.
took that as symbolism of her stress levels and her trauma because people say like trauma ages the body and don't worry so much, you're gonna get gray hairs.
Yeah,
She literally did.
yeah. She the whole streak of gray hair. Also, it looks so fucking cool.
It
Like,
does. And it's kind of like battle scars in a
yeah.
way. It shows that she's been through some shit.
Yeah. So just her being really smart and going to seek out Freddy, I think just makes her a lot more of an interesting final girl character than most. Like, and I mean, like, I love slasher movies,
And I
but
feel like a lot of slasher movie characters don't fucking learn their lesson. They don't learn from their mistakes, and she takes things that happen, she learns from them.
yeah,
A
absolutely.
lot of people in slasher movies will just make the same dumb mistakes over and over again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about how many fucking Friday the 13th, how many Halloween movies there are. Everyone's just making the same stupid mistakes and
Yeah.
over and over again. We're gonna do this, so it's like 7 or 8 movies and stuff like that.
Yep.
I mean, it's not like this franchise is any different, but Nancy isn't in the rest of the franchise besides 3.
How many people, I'd love to know the stats on this. How many characters in slasher movies end up being killed while being like, "Oh, he's never gonna get me. It's just like the boogeyman. Like he's not real."
Probably a lot.
Yeah.
I have a long list of movies.
They never fucking learn.
Yep. And they still don't. They still don't. I gotta hate the new Scream movies. Anyways, what do you think of the score? What do you think of the score of this movie?
I think it's pretty epic.
I think it's pretty good. I think it's.
I think it's fitting.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think it's fitting, but
It's not like outstanding,
yeah,
but I think it's fitting to the point where it doesn't stand out as being really bad or like really incredible.
yeah. I'm basically in the same camp. I'd probably rate the score like an 8 or a 7 or something
Yeah.
like that, which is a good rating.
Yeah.
Good rating in my book.
No, I can agree with that.
Where I think
It's no Nightmare Before Christmas.
not the other nightmare. But yeah, I think it fits really well. I think when you watch the scenes of like everything fits really well. But I think if you're listening to it on its own, you'd be like, it's good.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of feel about it.
I don't feel like I'd ever go out of my way to listen to it independently from the film.
Yeah. I kind of think of it the same way as like the Terminator 1 soundtrack, where it's like when you're listening to this, like during the movie, like this is a banger. And then there's like, as it like,
Yeah.
fits so well in the movie. But then you listen on your own, like, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
So I had to bring it up because I feel like the score. So I don't think it's not like people don't talk about it enough, but I mean, like compared to like Halloween, which the
Yeah.
Halloween score is way better than this. But I feel like
Well,
Halloween
there's
talks about it a lot
also
more.
so many more movies, and they use the same part of the soundtrack over and over again, so it's become more iconic with each movie.
Yeah,
And Nightmare on Elm Street doesn't really have that opportunity, so I'm trying to be fair here.
yeah. Well, now that you mention it, I don't even feel like the other movies utilize this score that much.
Mm,
I feel like they kind of do their own like generic thing.
yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen all of them, so it's hard for me to say exactly. I've only seen 2 and 3 in the remake. Remake we don't want to talk about, but I think the other ones don't really use the motifs of the score at all or anything like that. Like Halloween and Terminator, like they use like the same like sounding stuff. Whereas I feel like this franchise was just like, whatever. We're not
Yeah.
gonna do that.
I don't see as much distinct repetition as I see in like Halloween and more iconic soundtracks.
Yeah. Another thing I want to mention is I feel like this movie has aged super well.
I agree.
It's still creepy. It looks really good for the most part. Maybe there's a couple like handful of things, but I feel like at that point when you're finding the handful of things that might not look as good, you're not really paying attention to the movie. You're trying to look for problems.
Mm,
Where like that person where they go into a movie and they're like, this is stupid. It was made 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And then but like this looks really good. It still has stuff that holds up really well.
I think part of the reason it holds up so well is, I mean, it doesn't matter how old you are, you've had a nightmare before.
Yeah.
And everyone's had a nightmare where they've been chased by someone. So I feel like everyone to some extent can relate to that kind of fear.
Mhm.
It's not like a generation specific thing. And we're going to get into how the movie relates to intergenerational trauma That also is something that people always experience that doesn't go away with age.
Yeah. But like the Tina's death on the ceiling, Glenn's death with all the blood spewing out, that moment where Freddy like is over the bed Nancy's sleeping in, which is just the material that's used in leggings. They just put somebody over it and
Yeah.
they did that. It just looks really good.
They've had some really cool visual effects put in there.
Yeah, and they still hold up, and a lot
Yeah.
of it you can tell. Well, I could tell at least. I'm not sure other people could tell, but they're just like reverse shots. Like when Glenn is getting hung, you could tell they just wrapped everything that way, and then they
like
pulled
what
away
we
from
did
it.
in that short film that one time.
Yeah, we did
With
it
the
in that
vines.
short.
Nice
Yeah,
job,
nice job,
idiot.
buddy. Yeah, we did do it in that short film once. Yep, with our good friend.
Mm-hmm. Who
What?
should be a guest star?
Oh yes, yep.
Shout out Grant. What's up?
Grant Morris. Got to have him on. Anyways, let's talk about this one topic. This last part of the thing about the movie, because then it kind of leads nicely.
All right.
The parents, the lovely parents.
They're so great, so involved in their
So
kids'
great.
lives.
Do you want to talk about the parents for a little bit, and I can say my opinions on them?
I think the storyline with the parents is interesting because part of the impact of the storyline is seeing how absent they are. It's not so much what the story does with the parents as what it doesn't do with the parents. Like when their kids are being tormented by this guy in their dreams, they're not exactly quick to reveal what's going on. And only Nancy's mom does that. Nobody else tells their fucking kid what's going on. Everyone else just dies and never knows why and who he is and what they were up against. So I think it's interesting that the lack of involvement tells a story within itself.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the only parents that seem somewhat nice are Glenn's parents.
Mm,
I mean, like, yeah, the dad seems like kind of like a dick, but like, I feel like he has like good intentions.
yeah.
And the mom seems nice. I have no quills with the mom or anything like that. But Tina's
Except for the fact that she didn't tell him what's going on. She knew damn well. Well, both of his parents did. We're supposed to assume, I think.
I think they did have something to do with it, but I don't think he ever mentioned anything about Freddy Krueger or anything. He didn't seem too phased about the dreams, so I honestly would be
Mm.
surprised if he did even mention anything.
Yeah, that's a good point because he didn't exactly take Nancy very seriously about waking her up.
Yeah. Because the mom never mentioned anything about
So
Freddy or anything.
I wonder if they would have told him had he said something.
Maybe. Maybe they would have been a little hesitant, but we don't know because it didn't happen.
I think Nancy's mom sucks
Yeah, Nancy's mom does suck.
because she's very outward about what she's experiencing. She talks about what she sees in her dreams, and her mom is just like, just a dream, honey.
Yeah. And even Rob, that's his name, right?
Rod.
I knew something like that. Rob, we never see his parents, but I think it's something like you're saying. It's like the lack of presence in the story is presence, in
Especially when he's on the run.
Yeah,
When he's accused of killing his girlfriend, he's on the run. You don't ever see the parents then either.
yep. They only show up at the funeral. They never visit him in jail. He never mentions anything about them. It just kind of seems like he's like, oh, I'm just living life by himself.
Yeah.
Tina's parents, which is something I didn't catch in my first watch until I watched it again, is that when Tina was like left alone in the house and stuff like that, her mom went to Las Vegas with her boyfriend that made an appearance to begin the movie. He's like, where'd you go, babe? Or whatever. And then her dad.
to get laid, babe.
just wanna get laid. He had the wife beater on and stuff like that.
What a mom's boyfriend character.
Absolutely. And then Nancy's dad, I think, mentions that Tina's dad left like 10 years ago, like just like randomly. So like basically Tina's mom is a single mom and left her only daughter to go to Las Vegas.
Let's go gambling.
Let's go gambling. So we kind of tackled those parents. So now we could talk about Nancy's parents, who don't really seem that great either.
No.
And something I did notice is at Rod at his funeral, Nancy's like, "Oh, I know who's doing the murders. It's Fred Krueger." And there's a dolly pushing um on Tina's mom and not Tina, Nancy's mom and Nancy's dad, kind of using the visual storytelling that they know what the fuck she's talking about,
Oh, I like
but
that. I
they're
didn't even
hiding it.
notice that.
Yeah, and she's like, I know who's doing it, it's Fred Krueger, and then I know it's specifically on the dad, but like it Dolly's in, so like they know what she's talking about.
Mhm.
The truth is coming to them. Uh, so they know, but they don't want to tell her or they don't want to believe
And
it.
I think that reinforces how much they suck.
Yeah.
Especially with how they choose to handle things knowing what's going on. It's one thing to know what's going on and not tell your kid. It's another thing to make them feel like they're crazy and do things that are counterintuitive to helping them, like the mom putting the bars on the windows.
Yeah.
You're trapping her in. You know what you're doing. Do you want your kid to die?
And even her dad, like, he's at Glenn's house. He has no body. It's all just blood. And Nancy calls the house. He's like, yeah, just go to sleep. It's like, you don't think anything's weird? Like, their 3 friends just died.
What's it going to take for this man to realize that there's something going on here?
Yeah. I mean, you could make the argument that he does because he puts the cop outside to be like, you just let me know if anything weird goes on.
You don't care that much.
Yeah, and it's also like a question of like, because he clearly thinks that Nancy has gone crazy at this point.
Yeah.
So you could make the argument that the cop is out there because he believes her or because he wants to make sure she doesn't do anything like rash.
Mm.
And I think it's the second. I don't think he believes her whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. And that also raises the question, does part of him believe her but is in denial about it?
I could see that. Yeah. And we mentioned how Nancy's mom is an alcoholic. And you could maybe say this is because she starts to drink more once Freddie becomes more in the picture and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can see her pulling bottles out of secret stashes and drinking in the middle of the hallway. She's not exactly trying to hide it as much as she does in the beginning.
Yeah. So you can maybe make the argument that she just doesn't want to think about how she killed Freddie or how these parents killed Freddie and she was part of it and stuff like that.
Or how she had a hand in what's going on with her daughter.
Yeah, because she basically inadvertently has caused this guy to haunt her and haunt the kids in their dreams.
Welcome to generational trauma.
Woo! Get hyped.
So that leads me to, what is generational trauma? And I'm going to consult a quote from verywellhealth.com. Intergenerational trauma is the theory that trauma can be inherited because there are genetic changes in a person's DNA. The changes from trauma do not damage the gene, instead, they alter how the gene functions. And there's also a different definition of intergenerational trauma from verywellmind.com, which says intergenerational trauma refers to trauma that's passed down from a trauma survivor to their descendants. It can also be referred to as transgenerational trauma or multi-generational trauma. So there's basically 2 ways to look at it, and both of them are valid. Both of them are evidence-based. So there is trauma that you inherit from the way that somebody expresses their own trauma. So let's say Nancy's mom drinking a lot in front of her kid. If you're going to look at it from the angle of modeling, Nancy's mom is modeling the behavior that drinking is how you cope with your problems. That can be part of intergenerational trauma, is passing down maladaptive coping mechanisms. But then there's also the epigenetics piece. And epigenetics is basically um, this field of biology that talks about how genes are kind of, to put in the most simplest terms, and remembering that I am not a biologist, the best I got was AP Bio, where we did very minimal epigenetics. So take this with a grain of salt. This is not a scientific explanation. This is the dumbed down version. But imagine genes are like a light switch, and trauma does not take the light switch and pull it out and put in a new one. Rather, it flips it on or off. And different things can result from that. And I'll pull up what can result from that. Because trauma responses are linked to more physical health issues, intergenerational trauma can manifest as medical issues, including heart disease, stroke, or early death. So something like that could be flipped on because of trauma as well.
Mm. So we can maybe come to the conclusion possibly that like this bringing back of Freddie has like flipped the light switch in Nancy's mom of like her starting to drink again and like her alcoholism coming back.
I don't think she ever stopped the alcoholism. I think, because when you think about it, how Nancy's mom's already met Freddie, she's already killed him, that light switch has already been flipped on.
Hmm.
But I think it reinforces and reactivates that trauma response to be her go-to behavior.
Okay.
So it reinforces that drinking coping mechanism because maybe she used that the first time she dealt with Freddie, and seeing him again brings back those memories, and she needs to revert back to using that coping skill.
Hmm. So you think it's always been on, but it's just come back more frequently since Freddie's back.
Yeah, because people argue that alcoholism isn't something that you can defeat. You're an alcoholic for life once you've been one. And this is one theory of alcoholism. So I'm not saying that this is the only way to look at things. But similar to substance use in like other drugs, um, alcoholism is something that you could very easily fall back into as if you had never stopped.
Okay. So you think, yeah, so she just,
It
now
just
that she has this more traumatic stuff and Freddie's come back, that now she's just back on it.
Yeah, it was easy to fall back into those old behaviors because her stress level's higher, which means she needs to use a coping skill. And maybe she never developed healthy coping skills. Maybe drinking is her only one. So she
Mhm.
reverts back to that.
Yeah. Now, that light switch analogy that you're using before, is that something that could affect somebody's child if they had these traumatic events and that maybe their children could receive these genes?
Yeah. So let's say Nancy's mom gets pregnant again, because we can assume that Nancy was alive during the time that her mom killed Freddie.
I think she might have a hard time getting pregnant being dead, but
Shut up.
I get what you mean. Let's say
Let's say before she died.
yeah, before she
Let's-
died, like,
Before she
remember-
died, she was pregnant and she gave birth to another baby. Because she had that light switch flipped on from facing Freddie. Let's say that light switch that flipped on was like her overactive fight or flight response. Let's say that she's hypervigilant. Let's call it the hypervigilance light switch. It's flipped on because she's dealt with Freddie. Now she can pass on that gene to the child. So even though the child has never met Freddie, never heard of him, never dealt with him, that hypervigilance is on anyway. So that child, if they're never told the story of Freddie, could go throughout their entire lives being hypervigilant and not know why.
Mm. Interesting.
Just-
So,
Sometimes people have to go to therapy for trauma that wasn't even theirs
yeah.
because they inherited the gene switched on that happen because of trauma, even in the absence of their own firsthand experience with trauma.
Mm, interesting. So, I mean, I am kind of curious what some of the other parents' trauma responses are for dealing with Freddie and stuff like that. Because I mean, all the other parents, I mean,
Seems like denial,
denial, like lack of accountability.
avoidance.
You could maybe make that argument for
Tina's mom.
Tina's mom, Tina's dad, and
True,
even
yeah,
Nancy's
Tina's mom.
dad, because he just left. We don't really understand. We don't know why they got divorced. Could have been something completely different, but maybe it did have something to do with Freddie
Yeah.
driving away.
And that's pretty typical for families that deal with tragedy, like couples that lose a baby. Oftentimes, more often than couples that don't lose a baby, end up breaking up because they deal with the trauma in their own ways.
Hmm. And this sort of ties into what I think what Freddie represents, and I think Freddie represents guilt, and I think he represents the guilt of the parents. And this guilt has now passed down to their children, which is in sort kind of a generational trauma because the parents defeated Freddy, but now it's the children's turn to defeat Freddy. It's
Mm,
their time to defeat their Freddy and burn him. I guess is that what way
yeah.
of putting it.
I think we basically have the same theory, but are calling it two different
I
things.
think so. Yeah.
And I want to pull up another thing here. Okay. I wanted to bring up Glenn's idea for how to deal with Freddie because I think that very much pertains to how people deal with trauma and maybe how the parents are dealing with their guilt with avoidance.
Yeah.
So here's a conversation that Nancy and Glenn have when Nancy had been going through that book of booby traps. Um, and they're having a conversation about monsters in their dreams. And Nancy says, "But what if they meet a monster in their dreams? Then what?" And Glenn says, "They turn their back on it, take away its energy, and it disappears." He thinks that you can just ignore Freddie, ignore trauma, ignore guilt, and that will take away its power. Unfortunately, not how trauma works. You can't just repress, and expect that it's not going to come back up in some way.
Mm.
And so in the end of the movie, I think it's kind of funny because he obviously Freddie like bursts into the real world and Nancy turns her back on him and says, let's see, what does he say? What does she say? "It's too late, Kruger. I know the secret now. This is just a dream. You're not alive. This whole thing is just a dream. I want my mother and my friends again. I take back every bit of energy I gave you. You're nothing. You're shit." So she thinks that what Glenn said is true and that she can just literally turn her back on him and be like, "La, la, 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 la. You're not there. You're not real." And oftentimes that's how people deal with trauma.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go away. It doesn't work like that. Like Nancy's mom burying herself in alcohol and Tina's dad running away and Tina's mom going off to Las Vegas. They're all running away from their problems. But I think that all furthers the idea that you can't run away from your problems because in the end, the kids are mostly dead.
Yeah. Mostly. Besides Nancy, because she's too cool.
Because she uses her brain.
She does use her brain.
But in the very end, I mean, you could argue that even she becomes victim of Freddie because she's like, "La la la, you're not real," and then she steps outside and everything's bright and her mom's alive and her friends are alive. And she gets in the car and the car like clamps down on them and it's Freddie. And it just goes to show like you can't actually defeat your trauma that way. You do have to face it. You have to put in a lot of conscious effort to defeat intergenerational trauma.
Right. Yeah. And I think you could maybe make the argument. I guess it depends on how you interpret the ending because the ending is parentheses open ended ish, ish, because so just to go on a side tangent a little bit. Wes Craven, when he made the movie, he wanted to make a very like one and done ending. Like that's it, that's the movie, it's over. But then the studio was like, well, we got to keep it open just in case we want to make more sequels.
Just in case this makes us a lot of money.
Which it did. So they decided to milk it like a cow. So you could make the argument that she actually does defeat Freddy, and then like something else happens, I guess. I mean, I agree with you because she doesn't defeat Freddy in the end because Freddy does end up coming back
As a car.
as a car.
Yo,
Yeah.
just like my dog
Just
did
like
in
your
my
dog.
dream.
And also the top of the car has the Freddy striped sweater.
I
On
liked
top of it.
that. I thought that was
Yeah.
funny.
But you could make that argument that she does defeat Freddy, but she doesn't really. Because one thing I don't really like about this movie is the ending. The ending is kind of stupid.
I guess you could, yeah, I didn't like the ending either. I guess you could argue that things are better, but she's still scarred from having faced him.
Yeah.
So maybe that was a hallucination.
Yeah. Maybe it was an actual dream because maybe she was sleeping. Yeah, it's kind of
Mm.
nice and sunny outside. So maybe you kind of view that as a dream. Maybe she finally got some sleep.
Hmm. Interesting.
But something I do want to bring up, it's kind of a devil's advocate thing, because I'm cool like that. You could make the argument that what Freddy represents is having control in someone's life, having control in your own life, because it's about controlling your dreams and stuff like that, and controlling things in your life and saying that things don't matter. So you could make the argument that Freddy is about having control in your life. And
Hmm.
like once you get that control, you've defeated Freddy.
So you're saying that like the ones who died because they didn't try to control the situation with Freddie, whereas Nancy lives because she said, I'm gonna take this into my own hands and figure out how to defeat this guy.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
I think you could make that argument.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about metaphors here. So, I mean, you could say 100 different things.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think it's guilt, but I can see the argument for it being control and having control in someone's life. And it's just using the dreams as like a metaphor for actual life.
You could also, in the same way, call that defeating intergenerational trauma.
Yeah.
Not perpetuating the cycle and passing it down to the next generation by actually facing the sins of your past and your family's past and working to build the skills to deal with those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Taking control of the trauma and trying to fix it from there, or even just recognizing that it's a problem.
Yeah,
in the
not
first place.
turning your back on it.
Yeah,
and
not
going,
turning your back on
la
it.
la la, it's not there.
But yeah, that is another thing to maybe keep in mind is that maybe instead of guilt could be about control too.
I had a question for you. I was thinking when we were watching that recap video. Do you think that the blurred line between
I know you want
shut up. I hate that song. Anyway, you're going to not say that again. Thank you.
you.
Do you think that don't say it. Don't say it again. Do you think that the blurred line between the dream world and reality has a meaning in itself? And if so, what would it mean?
No.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for
that.
that very deep answer.
I know. I mean, like, look. When I watch these movies, I try to come at it with like a more of a scene analysis perspective, or I'm watching it a little more in depth and trying to take note of certain things. But sometimes in movies, they do things because it works cinematically. And I think the distortion between I think the distortion between reality and the dream world is more about building suspense in a scene of whether or not something.
Okay. But do you think you could argue that it has a meaning?
Yeah.
Like, if you argued that it has a meaning, what would your narrative be?
If I were to argue if it has a meaning, I guess in the context of our conversation, I would say maybe about identifying guilt or identifying trauma. But I'm looking at it more in the context of what we're talking about because that's kind of where my head is at right now.
So my thought was, and I'll read down what I wrote.
Oh, this is your own thought?
Yeah.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, I was thinking this when we were watching that recap video and it showed the scene with Tina in the body bag. So my thought is that the blurred line between the dream world and reality could also be a representation of generational trauma because trauma can make it confusing for your body to decide whether or not to be in fight or flight mode, and you can start to question your own reality.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, I
So
get
you
that.
might ask yourself, is this a trauma response or is this a valid response to what's going on right now? Is this an over response because my body is primed to deal with traumatic situations? Or is this actually something traumatic that's going on right now that I should be responding to in this way?
I see that. Yeah, I do say I'm not going to argue with that. And I do understand that point where you're coming from. And I think this kind of ties back to what I was saying earlier about my thoughts in movies. The movie doesn't do it too much. It only does it like twice, where it's like, is this a dream or is this reality? Where that's why I came to the conclusion where I'm like, I don't think I can pull a meaning from it because it only happens a couple times. But I get where you're coming from, where it's is this a trauma response or is it not? Is this something I should worry about or is this something
Yeah.
I shouldn't?
Am I being hypervigilant or am I reacting to something that's actually happening?
Yeah, I get that.
Because you can kind of see through Nancy's facial expressions, she's kind of questioning, am I seeing this right now? Is this happening right now?
Yeah. Yeah, I think especially with Rod being like hung, I think at that point she's like, is this happening for real? Because she starts yelling Glenn's name and then Glenn doesn't respond because she's sleeping. Because at that point you might think that she's still awake and Glenn's like behind her,
Yeah.
but Glenn is zonked in her bedroom.
Yeah.
But I can see that. It's just I think it's harder for me to justify it having a like a theatric metaphor when it only happens a couple times. That's why I say that they said the answer no, and I think it was just for suspense. But I get and I understand why you came to that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that that was the intention, but that is the meaning that I draw from it because of the meaning that I draw from Freddy and the movie as a whole.
Yeah. But guess what?
What?
You're not wrong, and I'm not wrong. You know why?
Because it's subjective.
Correct.
Wow.
People should learn the word subjective.
No, you're wrong.
You're wrong.
Freddy, it's actually statistically proven that Freddy represents one thing and one thing only. And if you think otherwise, you're stupid.
Oh man, I hate the internet. I was listening to our show on the internet. I think it's interesting, but I mean, I kind of talked about what Freddy represents, and I know you said that you think it's the same thing. We're just talking about wording it different ways.
Yeah, we're
you
just
word
calling
it in your you word it in your way because I'm curious to see if we do differ on it or if it's the same type of way.
What? You want me to say how he represents intergenerational trauma?
I want you to say why he represents what you think.
I think Freddy represents intergenerational trauma because the parents, after killing him, didn't do anything to heal from it or to recover from the effects. Because I imagine extremely traumatic to murder a person, whether or not they were a bad person. Like a lot of people who kill in self defense end up dealing with a lot of guilt and self blame and self hatred. And that can destroy your life if you let eat you up and you don't end up dealing with it. And because they choose not to deal with it, that then is passed down to their children and becomes a battle that they then have to face. And because they don't know what battle they're facing, they don't know how to defeat it until Nancy, in her own mind, kind of works through things. And luckily, her mom eventually comes clean to her, which I feel like is an important piece of intergenerational trauma. Is if you recognize where this is coming from in your own child, you should be telling them, I think that this is where it's coming from, because that's the only way that they can really heal from it, is first acknowledging why it's existing.
Yeah.
And once she knows what she's up against, then she can figure out some tools to defeat it.
hmm I think your opinion is definitely a lot more elaborated than mine, which isn't a bad thing. I think mine, I just look at it more just in the general context of these parents, like, while they think they're doing a good thing, I mean, like you said, have guilt or trauma about killing this person. And I think this guilt has been passed down, which is that generational trauma aspect of it.
Yeah, I think we have the same opinion, but I have over explained and overthought about mine.
Not a bad thing,
Yeah, I just overthink everything.
though.
That's just a me thing.
um, yeah, something I did want to bring up. Is another one of my scene analysis moments. Not really though. But when Nancy's mom, so that it's this moment right after Nancy comes back from the doctor's office, and Nancy didn't sleep all night, and she has the gray hair. Nancy's mom tries to hide the liquor bottle behind her,
Mm,
but the conversation is about Freddie. They're talking about Freddie in the conversation because she has Freddie's hat, and the mom is
mhm.
talking about how she threw it away and trying to forget about it. Something she does in the scene, which is kind of interesting, is she tries to constantly hide the liquor bottle behind her and try to block it out of her. And I think when you watch that, you could maybe make the argument that she's trying to hide that she's drinking. Because I mean, that's what
Mm.
you're seeing visually in the scene. But in a metaphorical aspect, you could look at it as like the liquor bottle is hiding the truth, and she's trying to not talk about Freddie, saying like, "Oh, this didn't happen." Using the liquor
Yeah.
bottle as like a way of like hiding the truth.
Yeah, so even though she's faced head on with the reality of the situation, she's still trying to deny that it exists and trying to turn her back on it and say, "No, that's not real. That's not happening right now." There's still a part of her that doesn't wanna believe it.
Yeah, and Nancy smashes the bottle at the end of the scene to I think kind of shows it, like she knows the truth.
Yeah, and to say, "I don't want you to be in denial about it because now it's affecting me too."
Yeah. So something I wanted to bring up because I think it's kind of interesting, and I think it's a smart way of directing that scene because I believe it's literally just that one shot, but the blocking in that scene, I think, makes it a lot more interesting behind the liquor bottle and stuff like that, and constantly trying to hide behind it. Kind of that's
Mhm.
symbolizing Freddy.
And I wanna make it clear that I don't think people who turn to drinking are inherently bad people. Clearly, she went through some shit, but we can acknowledge that she has gone through significant trauma and it's terrible. And it sucks that that's the way that she had to cope with it to get through it, while also acknowledging that it is actively hurting Nancy.
hmm
So both characters are valid in their expression of trauma, and I do still hold sympathy for her mother because she also went through something horrendously traumatic, but the way she's coping with it is inadvertently hurting Nancy.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, is there anything further to discuss? You think, or
Nope.
nope? Well, great job, folks.
Follow us.
let's wrap up the show. Thank you all for listening. I feel like this is a pretty good discussion about Mr. Fred Wardo in Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984.
Let us know what you think Freddy represents. I'm very curious as to what other theories are out there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we watched beforehand is somebody thought he was literally the devil. I don't agree with that, but
Yeah, I don't really see it either.
yeah, I don't know, like nothing against the person we watched because they definitely did the research. They looked at it on a deeper level. They tried to look at things on a deeper level,
I
but
see the argument with the religious imagery,
yeah,
but I feel like if he were the devil, this would be something that people outside of the involvement with Freddy would be facing.
yeah, and I just feel like any slasher, you could make the argument that they're the devil.
That's true.
Like,
Or they're a demon.
yeah, like Michael
They're
Myers.
sent
I
from
think
hell.
Michael Myers, I think, is the only exception because you literally have Dr. Loomis the entire time being like, he is pure evil. Like,
Yeah.
this guy is evil. Like, he's just like going around saying it the entire movie. So you're like, okay, I think Michael Myers represents evil. It's like,
No way.
but like,
Evil dies tonight. Do you think that they meant that he's evil? What?
but like, I mean, let's just look at Chucky. You can be like, Chucky represents the devil because he uses this satanic like ritual to become a doll, and it's just like, okay, I guess. But I don't know, it just kind of feels like I feel like you could apply that to anything, and it
Yeah.
just be in a
Also,
account.
like, you could say that about anyone in real life who kills people.
Yeah,
They're sent from hell. They're the devil. I don't know. I feel like, once again, not to knock this guy, but I feel like it's just a way to rationalize the fact that people can do shitty things and
Right.
still be people, not demons or monsters.
yeah,
Because I think the scariest part about people doing evil things is that they're people and they're not monsters. That's what makes it so scary.
yeah,
But people call killers monsters and demons because it's a way of differentiating themselves from them and being like, oh, that's not me. I'm not a monster. I'm a human being.
yeah.
I could never be like that. That person's a demon. They're not even a person.
Mhm. Right. And that's one thing I think is effective in Halloween because you just hear how evil he is, and then the mask comes off, and you're like, he's just a guy.
Yeah.
But then he represents you. I'm not talking about the sequels. I'm just talking about Halloween 1. We'll probably end up having a discussion on Halloween 1 one day, but
I'm sure we will.
but I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's interesting what the different representations of Freddy could represent and stuff like that. But if you think he's the devil, that's okay. We're not here to fight you.
I will not be writing a 10-page essay on why you're wrong and why you're stupid.
We don't care.
You are entitled to your own opinion. And if you find the evidence to argue it, good for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And this guy that we watched, he had evidence for it.
Yeah.
I didn't agree with the interpretation of the evidence, but I could see it.
Mhm.
That's the cool thing about art. We can take whatever the fuck we want from it. Yep. That's cool. Anyways.
And you also you put your own life experience into it as well.
Yeah.
Everybody sees things through their own lens, and their own lens is shaped by their experience, their education, their background, whatever, everything that goes into who they are. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong. It means that it was shaped. Your view was shaped a certain way because of whatever you went through, whatever you know.
Yeah.
Similar to trauma.
Mm.
You can interpret things as traumatic that somebody else doesn't see as traumatic. And it doesn't mean that one of you is wrong and one of you is right. It means it was traumatic for you and not traumatic for someone else. But you're both not wrong.
Yeah.
Full circle moment.
Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed the Halloween series that we had. Kind of accidentally, but whatever. In the Mouth of Madness, Teeth, and this.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. Please tell your friends and stuff like that.
Tell your movie-loving friends. Tell your psychology-loving friends. Tell your friends that go to therapy.
Yep. They would love this.
They all would.
Yep.
Because this is something that's not subjective and up to interpretation.
Yep. You will love this show.
This is
Art.
objectively good. You're not allowed opinions when it comes to us unless they're positive.
But follow us on Instagram. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. And we're on Apple Podcasts.
And give us 5 stars.
Yep. And please tell your friends to listen and stuff like that.
And tell your mom.
Tell your mom. Mom would love our podcast.
Dad might too.
Yep, maybe. But thank you for listening, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
No problem.
Love you. Oh, Jesus. That jump scared me. I did not expect it to be that loud. Oh my God.
Alright. Should we take it from the take it from the top? Okay, this
No, I think we should leave it.
because people are gonna expect it. I'll put it at the end.